Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Today we are going to deal with a biology topic in 7th standard for FA4, transportation and excretion in that of plants and animals. So first we will discuss what is transportation. The circulatory system in that of plants and animals is what you call as transportation. As such, we are going to deal with transportation in the case of unicellular organisms first, and then we are going to deal with that of multicellular organisms like that of plants and animals. So in the case of unicellular organisms, you all are aware that amoeba and paramecium are the best examples for that of unicellular organisms. In the case of unicellular organisms like these, the best mode of transportation is by means of the simple diffusion process. Your diffusion is a process where a spontaneous movement of the particles transfer from that of a higher concentration medium to that of a medium of lower concentration. So here, when amoeba is in need of the food, you know that the surrounding medium is very much rich in that of the nutrients, and the food component enter into that of the plasma membrane into the body of the amoeba by means of the diffusion process. Again, in the mode of excretion, when the toxic components get accumulated in that of the body of the amoeba or any unicellular organism as such, by means of diffusion process only, they get excreted out to that of the surrounding environment. So here, by means of the streamlined motion of the cytoplasm, the process does happen within the body of the amoeba or in any other unicellular organisms. When you talk about the multicellular organisms, we all know that both plants and animals are included under multicellular organisms as such. When you talk about the plants first, we'll deal with the transportation mechanism in the case of plants. The most important mode of transportation mechanism in the case of plants is by means of the vascular bundle. The vascular bundle comprises of the xylem and that of the phloem. When you talk about the xylem, they plays a major role in that of the transportation of water from that of the root to that of the various body parts of the plant body as such. When the root hairs as such absorb the water that is being present in the soil, the water molecules enter into that of the root hair and then enter into the cell and then enter into the root xylem and then is transported to that of the stem xylem by means of a physical force here. So what sort of physical force does play a major role here? You all know that during transpiration, the water is lost by that of the plants to that of the surrounding environment by means of water vapor here. This process in which the water is lost in the form of water vapor is what you call as transpiration. So when the transpiration process happens, there is a pressure difference that is being created in that of the body parts of the plant with that of the lower region, especially in the root region. Because of the difference in pressure, the water molecules from that of the root region get transferred to the upper regions of the plant body, and thereby all other regions of the plant also do get water here as such. So when you talk about how the water and minerals are getting transported, the term that is used to denote the dissolved minerals in that of water is called as sap. So transportation of sap in the ascending form in the xylem tubes is what you call as ascent of sap. This is mainly done by means of the physical force, what you call as the transpiration pull. Then you talk about the phloem, which is another important component of the vascular bundle and also plays a major role in that of the transportation of plants as such. Phloem plays a major role in the transfer of food. We know that leaves are the major sites of photosynthesis. From that of the leaf, the various body parts are to receive the food components so that they could gain energy for various metabolic activities of the cell as such. So from the site of photosynthesis, that is the leaves, the food components are to be transferred to various parts of the body like that of the tip of a shoot or the tip of the root, whatever it might be. So the movement of these food particles and that of the phloem tube is what you call as translocation. When you talk about how is the directional flow, in the case of xylem, the water is always conducted from that of the water to various parts of the body, and you call this as unidirectional motion. But in the case of phloem, from that of the leaves, it is either transferred to that of the tip of the shoot or to the tip of the root. So always in the case of phloem, the movement of the food particle is bidirectional. That's it about the transportation of molecules, either the water or food in the case of plants. When you come to that of animals, we discuss about the multicellular animals here, especially the human beings. The human circulatory system will be playing a major role, and in the circulatory system we talk about the heart and the blood vessels and also another main important component what you call as blood. When you see the structure of the heart. You know that the heart is situated in the thoracic cavity, or what you call as the chest cavity, slightly towards the left as such, and it has 4 main chambers, 2 auricles and 2 ventricles. The chambers that are there located at the topmost region of the heart are what you call as auricles, and these are comparatively smaller in size compared to that of the ventricles, and these two form the auricular region, these two form the ventricular region. And this side, the right side of the heart, is always separated from the left side of the heart by means of a muscular wall-like structure, what you call as the septum, and the auricles are separated from that of the ventricles, but the right auricle is being separated from that of a right ventricle by means of a valve, and the left ventricle is being left auricle is being separated from that of a left ventricle by means of another valve here. When we discuss about the circulation, we will get to know its important role. So before that, we will proceed to that of how the circulation here happens. When you talk about the blood vessels, we have to discuss about 3 main types of blood vessels, namely the arteries, the veins, and also that of capillaries. Arteries are those blood vessels that always carry the oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood is nothing but oxygen filled blood, that is blood that is very much rich in oxygen as such. And veins are those blood vessels that always carry the deoxygenated blood, that is it does contain more amount of carbon dioxide comparatively. Capillaries form a network between that of the arteries and that of the veins. So when you talk about the structure of the arteries and the structure of the veins as such, you can see that the arteries are very much thick walled to withstand the pressure exerted by that of the pumping of the human heart as such. Likewise, in the case of veins, these are very much thin walled compared to that of arteries. When you talk about how is the blood that is being carried by the arteries, it is always carrying the oxygenated blood. When you talk about the veins, they always do carry the deoxygenated blood only, and the valves are absent in the case of arteries, whereas valves are being present in the case of veins, so as to facilitate the unidirectional flow and to prevent the backward flow of blood. So when you talk about what is the role of arteries here, when you talk about the structure of the heart here, you can see that it does contain 2 main blood vessels that is entering into that of the right auricle. This is also called as the right atrium. So whatever deoxygenated blood is being present on the upper region of the body are being collected by that of the veins, and they enter into that of the right atrium by means of superior vena cava. It is a major vein as such, and then whatever deoxygenated blood is being present in the lower region of the body as such are being collected by the different veins, and they enter into the right atrium by means of the inferior vena cava. And now once the right atrium is completely filled with deoxygenated blood, they are now pushed on to that of the right ventricle. These valves that are being present in between that of the right atrium and that of the right ventricle open up, and the blood that now enters into that of the the right ventricle as such. So from here, the deoxygenated blood is being pushed on to that of the lungs for the gaseous exchange to take place. It is done by means of pulmonary artery. So pulmonary artery is an exception where we talk about arteries carry oxygenated blood, but here the pulmonary artery is an exception whereby the deoxygenated blood from that of the right ventricle is being carried by the pulmonary artery to that of the lungs, whereby a gaseous diffusion takes place. The carbon dioxide that is being present in the deoxygenated blood is exhaled out, and during inhalation whatever oxygen is being taken in from the lungs, it is now getting mixed with that of the blood now, and then enters into the left atrium by means of pulmonary vein. Again, please remember, we do say that arteries and veins, arteries as such do carry oxygenated blood, veins do carry deoxygenated blood, but in the case of pulmonary artery an exception whereby it carries deoxygenated blood and pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood. Now the oxygenated blood enters into that of the left atrium, and then when the valve between that of the left atrium and the left ventricle opens, the oxygenated blood now enters into the left ventricle, and from that of the left ventricle the oxygenated blood is pushed on to the major blood vessel, what you call as aorta, and is then supplied to various parts of the body. Now the blood that is very much rich in oxygen are taken to different parts of the body by means of the arteries here. So when these arteries reach the tissue that is being the arteries are such that contain the oxygenated blood. When they reach the tissues, they diverge into smaller and smaller network as such, forming a network of capillaries, and these capillaries to a certain extent take up the oxygenated blood, and when once they reach the tissues which have multiple cells, the oxygen is being delivered with that of the food components and other essential nutrients to that of the different cells, and the waste materials that are being present in that of the cells are being collected away by that of the blood again, and these capillaries unite together to form the next blood vessel, what you call as the veins, and these veins merge together forming the superior and the inferior vena cava. So with this we are completing the circulation, how it happens in that of the human beings as such. When you talk about the component of blood, we have to discuss about 4 main components of blood, namely the RBCs, or what you call as the erythrocytes or the red blood cells, then the WBCs or the leukocytes or the white blood cells, then you will have to talk about the next one, the platelets, and then finally the plasma. Your plasma is the only fluid medium in which the other 3 cells are being suspended. The RBC plays a major role in rendering the color to that of the blood. You know that it contains a pigment called as a hemoglobin, which renders the red color to that of the blood as such. When you talk about the WBCs, I believe you all are aware that they are the soldiers of the body, and they enable the protection against any sort of diseases. They fight against the germs that are invading the body and enables the protection to happen in the body as such. Now the platelets, these are also called as the thrombocytes. These thrombocytes as such play a major role in the clotting of the blood, and finally the plasma, it's a straw colored fluid medium in which all the other 3 cells are being suspended as such. When you list out the functions of the blood as such, you can say that it plays a major role in the transfer of oxygen from that of the lungs to that of the various body parts, because all cells need oxygen for their respiratory mode to gain energy. Next, whatever toxic things get accumulated in that of the cells as such, like that of the carbon dioxide and the other waste materials, the carbon dioxide is taken from that of the various tissues to that of the lungs by means of the blood only, and the other waste materials that are being generated during the metabolic process in the various cells as such are being taken from that of the tissues and are delivered to the sites of excretion by means of blood only. And whatever food components are there digested in that of the digestive system, the final nutrients are being absorbed in that of the small intestine, and from there again it is being delivered to that of the various parts of the body by means of blood only. The hormones that are being secreted by that of the endocrine glands are being delivered to that of the various parts of the body by means of the blood only. And finally, when you come for the balance, the temperature as well as the pH balance of the body, it is mainly done by means of blood. So with this we are completing with that of the circulatory system in the case of animals. But when you talk about the heart, we generally discuss about the heartbeat and that of a pulse rate, isn't it? So what do you mean by a heartbeat? Whenever the auricles receive the blood, be it the deoxygenated blood or be it the oxygenated blood, whenever the auricles receive the blood and they have to be transferred to that of the ventricles, the auricles have to contract, and then only the valves do open and the blood enters into that of the ventricles. And likewise, when the deoxygenated blood from that of the right ventricle or the oxygenated blood from that of the left ventricle have to be pushed out to the different blood vessels, the ventricles have to contract. So this periodic contraction and relaxation of the heart is what you call as heartbeat. Generally, when you go to the doctor, you are being tested with that of a stethoscope, isn't it? So the heartbeat is being tested by means of a device called as the stethoscope. We check the pulse in that of a wrist. So what do you mean by a pulse rate then? In a normal human being, the pulse rate is around 72 per minute. It is nothing but the number of heartbeats per minute as such. So in a normal adult individual, it should be only around 72 beats per minute. In your textbook, there is a simple experiment devised with that of a making of a simple stethoscope. Maybe you can test it at home. You can test out your own heartbeat by making your own device as such and test it. So with this, we are completing the circulatory system in the case of both plants and that of animals. Next, we will proceed to that of excretion. So, like all other life processes, be it the circulatory system, be it the respiratory system, whatever it might be, the excretory system also plays a major role in that of any kind of organism, be it a unicellular organism or be it a multicellular organism. During the various metabolic process, there are various toxins or harmful substances that are getting accumulated in the body of a plant, or in that of a unicellular organism, or in that of an animal only. For the survival rate of the organism, it becomes very much essential for these components to be pushed out of the body. The organism has to get rid of all these components if at all they have to survive. So first we will see about the excretory mode in the case of unicellular organisms, then we will discuss about the multicellular organisms and what are the different kinds of modes of excretion that are being exhibited by the various organisms as such. In very simple organisms like that of amoeba, or in the case of paramecium, the mode of excretion is also very simple. Like what we discussed in the case of transportation, the mode of diffusion only will be a mode of excretion here. So, by the simple process whereby the toxic chemicals get accumulated in the body of unicellular organism because of a change in difference of the concentration of the toxins present within the body and the concentration of the toxins outside in the environment, the toxic chemicals from that of the body of the organism will be ejected out through the plasma membrane to the surrounding environment. This is what happens in the case of unicellular organisms. But in the case of organisms like that of insects, the Malpighian tubules will be playing a major role in the mode of excretion. When you talk about organisms like that of earthworm, the Nephridia will be playing a major role. So what about the organisms, the higher order multicellular organisms you talk about? Based on the toxins that are being excreted by them, you classify them into three different categories, namely ammonotelic, uricotelic and ureotelic. So what do you mean by ammonotelic organisms? All those organisms that are going to excrete ammonia as their excretory waste product, you classify them under ammonotelic organisms, because ammonia is not soluble in water that easily and needs plenty of water for its excretion. Most of the aquatic organisms have ammonia as a toxic product and these excrete ammonia by dissolving it in water as such. But in some land animals like that of the lizard or that of a snake as such, they excrete uric acid in the semi-solid form and these are being classified under uricotelic organisms. When we talk about some other land animals, especially like that of man, the harmful toxic chemical that is being accumulated in that of the body is urea, and this has to be ejected out by the body, and hence these organisms will be called as ureotelic organisms. Now, when you talk about the excretory mode in the case of plants, here the major components that are formed during excretion is that carbon dioxide, which is being liberated out during the gaseous exchange. So, some amount of carbon dioxide which is obtained during respiration is taken in by the plants itself for the photosynthetic process during daytime. But at night time, the carbon dioxide is liberated out to the surrounding environment. As you all are aware, during photosynthesis, some amount of water is also being created as a byproduct. This water that is obtained as a byproduct is being ejected out to the surrounding environment by means of water vapor, and this is what you call as transpiration. So, what are the other harmful toxins that are being produced in the plants as such? So, you would have heard about the words as rubber, gum, latex, etc. All these are nothing but the waste products that are being produced by the plant body as such, but these harmful toxic chemicals are then converted into the harmless forms and they are being present and stored within the plant body itself later, which are being extracted by that of the human beings and can be used later. There are other harmful substances which will be converted into harmless substances and it will be stored in that of the vacuoles in the case of plants and will be shed in the form of leaves or in the form of bark as such when they are being shed. When you talk about the mode of excretion in the case of human beings, you talk about three main modes of three main excretory products here. The major component that is formed is carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide that is formed as a metabolic waste during the various products of the body will be ejected out by means of the lungs during the exhalation process. So whatever carbon dioxide that is getting accumulated within the body of organism like that of human beings will be collected away by the blood, then taken to that of the lungs, and during the exhalation process the gaseous exchange takes place in that of the lungs, whereby oxygen is taken in during inhalation and carbon dioxide is liberated out to that of the surrounding environment during the exhalation process. So what about the next mode of excretion here? The skin serves as an organ for excretion, whereby some amount of water, some amount of urea and some other salts are being excreted out in the form of sweat through the skin as such. There are minute pores that are being present on the dermal layer, what you call as the skin, and they are being excreted out to that of the surrounding environment. The next major thing, the most important, the excretory system of human beings comprises of 4 main components. It comprises of 2 kidneys, a pair of ureters, and then a urinary bladder, and then the urethra. So when you talk about the location of the kidneys, there are a pair of kidneys located in that of the abdominal cavity of human beings, one on each side of the vertebral column. These are roughly around 150 grams in weight and they measure around 12 centimeters in that of height. So these pair of kidneys as such are being connected to that of the urinary bladder by tube-like structures, what you call as ureters. And once the urine is formed in that of the kidney as such, the urine is being taken through the ureters, then it is stored for some time in that of the urinary bladder and then excreted out through that of the urethra to that of the surrounding environment. So how come these are going to play a role? These kidneys are very much rich in nephrons. Nephrons are the basic unit of kidney. Each of these kidneys will comprise millions of nephrons, and these nephrons will comprise a capsule-like structure, what you call as a cup-shaped structure here, known as the Bowman's capsule. It is very much rich in blood capillaries. When the blood that is containing all the excretory waste materials are being brought to that of the Bowman's capsule, it is being filtered out. All these Bowman's capsule and the entire nephron unit acts like a filter. The essential components like that of some amount of water, some amount of glucose, amino acids, all those will be reabsorbed by the body. The toxic waste substances like that of the urea and unwanted water, the huge amount of water that is being present, some other mineral salts will be excreted out here. So the main filtration process happens in that of the Bowman's capsule, whereby the blood is being filtered and it is now rid of all the toxic waste products, and the purified blood will be sent back to the blood again once more for circulation here. So this is the major role of the nephrons present in that of the kidney. So the solid components will be excreted through that of the large intestine. The liquid components with that of water, like that of the minerals, the urea as such will be excreted through that of kidney. For the normal survival rate of an organism, the function of one kidney is more than enough. So what about the components of urine as such? It comprises mainly of 96% of water, then 2.5% of urea and 1.5% of mineral salts and compounds of sodium and potassium. So all these as such will be liberated out as urine through that of the urethra here. Some cases there are chances whereby the functioning of the kidney is being impaired. So when the functioning of the kidney is being impaired, it is essential that at least one kidney should be transplanted. So one kidney is being harvested from that of a healthy donor and it is being replaced here in the place of the damaged kidney by means of the surgical method. But in some cases, if there is no donor available, then it becomes essential for the person to get rid of the toxic waste materials that is getting accumulated in the body, or else it may become fatal. In that cases, there is a machine called as the dialyzer, which comprises the dialyzing unit, whereby the filtration process instead of the kidney is being done there in that of the dialyzing unit as such. So here in the case of the dialyzing unit, it comprises numerous tubular structures, what you call as the semi-permeable membrane. What do you mean by a semi-permeable membrane? It is just a membranous structure with that of tiny pores which enable the movement of particles from a region of high concentration. Here the diffusion process only plays a role. So from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. This machine also comprises a dialyzing tank filled with that of a dialyzing unit of fluid as such. This dialyzing fluid will contain all the essential components of that of the blood. So whenever the impure blood is being passed on through various membranes of that of the dialyzing unit, all the essential components will be retained in that of the blood. The unnecessary components like that of the harmful substances like that of urea or some of the mineral salts will be sent out to that of the dialyzing fluid and can be taken away in a periodic interval as such. Now the blood component is being now rid of all the harmful chemicals and it can be transferred to that of the patient's body, and the volume of the blood in that of the patient is also being retained. So this is one of the main processes that are being carried out for the purification of the blood as such, in case where the kidney is being either damaged due to an infection or during any accidents and all that. So this dialyzing unit, what you call as a dialyzer, plays a major role in the purification of blood, and the process is what you call as dialysis. So when you talk about the excretion, these are the main components here, and with this we are concluding the chapter for your FF questions.